Do you think there's anything out there right now that seems quite promising? So that might be red light therapy, baric chambers, ice baths, things like that. Is there anything you think is particularly more or less effective?
I think that there are a number of different modalities out there that a person might use on a case by case basis, which may or may not provide an actual traceable cause and effect benefit. But there are a number of places, I guess, I would place my emphasis. Were I in a position where I had, for example, an injury which I might like to quite have better, because nobody likes being injured for longer than necessary, or to optimize the process of healing and all of that. And I say that, and Jonathan's nodding knowingly because he knows I'm in that position and have been, and he knows all about that position himself, being post-op not that many months for a back situation. My situation is a torn Achilles tendon 7 months ago now. Sort of just now at the point where I can do one or two things that I haven't been able to do for 7 months at all, like jog a few paces or hold my own weight isometrically on the injured side with just that leg to hold me in. Just getting there, so it's exciting times, sort of thing. Anyway, so what did I do? Because, you could say, oh, what are some things that are interesting? But let's go with what I actually did. I took the advice, well, not really advice, because he never actually said to me, this is my advice as a physician to you, and we don't have that relationship. I took the ideas of Dr. Ken Berry around not icing these kind of injuries on board, and as such did not ice it from pretty much beyond it was iced at the time of the injury for 20 minutes, whatever. So no icing was important. I went straight to heat as preferable to cold. We didn't try and counteract the swelling, and there's a video on my channel of about 4 or 5 days after the injury, and there's this round thing that you would imagine might be an ankle. If it's this big puffy, so we didn't try and discourage that at all. I was weight bearing on it weeks and weeks before the medical profession told me I ought to be, or ought to expect to be able to bear my own weight on it. I was told 6 to 8 weeks in this boot. And it turns out after 2 weeks, the boot was off and I was starting to do that with it, sort of thing. So, from there, it's been the slow, steady progress that you would expect in a serious tendon injury, which is a non-vascular tissue and will always heal very slowly. So my approach was, number one, fully carnivorous diet as close as I could stay to that. Am I perfect? Nope. Sorry about that, boys and girls. I know all of you think I'm absolutely perfect in every way and have self-discipline to burn and all of that. Hate to disappoint you. No, but I've been pretty good. I've avoided most of the things that would normally cause me a real problem inflammation-wise and all of those kind of things. So pretty good on the diet. I have every day without fail taken a fistful of Cerule products, the stem cell enhancing anti-inflammatory product that I'm joint ventured with and promote. I took a course of oral BPC 157, which I got from Amazon. I think it has to be Amazon UK because you can't get it from Amazon US or something, if people need to
Yeah.
know. I took 500 micrograms in tablet form, those tiny little round tablets, up to 3 times a day. And that seemed to be associated with some quite good assistance as well. I have been steadily working on rehabbing, replacing the bulk of muscle that had atrophied away, getting the strength back, getting the function back into the joint, etc. I also received some neuro reset technique, physical therapy from the lovely Jessica Henrad up in another part of the country here. That's a technique whereby it's retraining your brain to be able to recruit, innovate, and send the right messages to your body to have control over the thing back where it might have got sloppy or whatever. Tightening up some of the nuts and bolts and making sure you know what you've got and how to use it, where it is in space and all of that kind of stuff. Ties in with the vestibular as well. Incredible treatment protocols that these guys have got. The problem is that there are, I think, 20 people worldwide who know how to do this therapy. So I'm privileged to be living relatively close. It's 2 flights to get there, but in the same country as one of them, I guess. And another one of them lives in the same house. So there's 18 others in the world to go and find out. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Doesn't come cheap, but why should it? Because it's actually cutting edge stuff that they're doing, basically. It's all very well to train a muscle to be big and strong, but if you haven't trained your brain how to set the right motor program in play that gets that muscle doing what you need it to do to produce the outcome in the right way, then it might not be very useful to you, sort of thing. So there was that. I continue to ground electrically as much as possible. I continue to sometimes, when I remember and feel like it, to block out the the blue light using the orange amber-coloured lenses at night time. I'm not doing it right now. Sue me, whatever. It's still on my list of recommendations, even if I'm not following it perfectly myself. And then the other recommendation is actually 3 or 4 sessions of 45 minutes to an hour, whole body split for most people, doing some resistance training, a couple of working sets per muscle group. Really big compounds, get in, get out of there. Or if you're not lifting weights that day, you might be doing high intensity burst repeat activity, something like that. That's where I would focus for injury, for expediting injury healing. All of those things will play an important role.
Yeah, recommend to anyone that's about to watch this, consult with Bart through his Patreon links and things like that, because it might be that you're applying all these things, but you need something extra, and he might be able to come up with something very specific and custom to you. So I highly recommend that.
Yeah. I mean, anything that I could ever say in one of these discussions, Jonathan, of course, is generalized. In an ideal world, if you were absolutely average, this advice would apply to you too. But that's all it is for informatory, sort of educational, entertainment purposes for the YouTube thing. If you want specified advice to you in your situation, then of course you need to consult. Yeah. Good point, well made.
Perfect. Yeah. So I got my last question now.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bart, are there any common themes with athletes that you notice across any sports really or exercise endeavors where they will get injured? Like, is it a matter of not warming up? Is it the wrong diet? Is there like one thing which tends to underpin why people get injured during training or competition?
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen anything that would convince me that there is one leading cause and it's really obvious. I think it's one of those the will of the gods things, or the nature of stochastic reality, if you want to think of it that way, whereby anytime you involve your body in anything physically demanding, there is a risk that you will exceed that body's capacity to withstand injury on that day at that time. So it's just dumb luck, is what I'm saying, and that people tend to get damaged in sport the first time at least. It happens when it happens. Now, of course, if you've had an injury and that injury has not been properly, fully phased, rehabilitated to an optimal level before you're asked to retake the field, for example, you may well get an aggravation or reoccurrence of the original injury. Or indeed, you might get another injury, which is a knock-on effect of favouring the injured part, which isn't quite right yet, but still, it's your job to play the sport because you're a professional athlete and you run on when you're told to in that situation. And the medical staff, of course, have your best interest at heart, of course. Oh, that's right. They're paid by the club. Are you with me? So that can be an issue. One of the things that I personally, this is an opinion. Let me disclaim, opinion, everybody. Warning, warning. Here comes an opinion. People tend to overtrain at all levels of sport, both recreational, sub-elite, elite, professional. They always do more exercise and training than what is required to produce the training effect that was desired. The training itself becomes a payoff, becomes a thing the person can't do without. You tell a gym junkie not to go to the gym for a week, and they will be climbing the bloody walls because there is a reliance on this dopamine and this pushing yourself in the gym thing, to the point where they lose complete sight altogether of what was motivating them in the first place, which was that training response. So that on the day of the event, they have the physical capacity to produce. If I could wave my magic wand, shut up, Ted. He was about to make rude jokes. But if I could wave my magic wand, and give you, Jonathan, the ability to run on at Wembley and outperform everybody on the field, in fact, run rings around everybody, score 3 tries at both ends, convert them all yourself, pull off a particularly clever set move with yourself running from 50 metres back from yourself and all of that. And while you were at it, do some entertaining tricks for the kids. Without any training at all, I could just say, there you go. Run on and do it. Or I could say, well, actually, you can have all of those things, but man, you're going to have to work bloody hard for years to get them. And so therefore, when it's not coming together as quickly as you'd like, well, the problem is you're just not doing enough and you need to do more of it. And when that doesn't work, because it won't, by the way, then more is the answer, because you've been a lazy little athlete. You have. You haven't pushed yourself to near death enough, basically, is what it is. That's why you're not getting better. Or maybe it's because your trainers haven't properly applied the principles around general adaptation syndrome, which requires you, A, to push your body hard enough to injure it in order to cause a training response, the healing of that injury. In other words, your training intensity has to be maximal at all times. Ergo, your volume has to be minimal, necessarily. It's not about doing more. It's about doing the appropriate intensity and doing it enough that it means that you will have that capacity on the day. which is determined by the event itself as to what the requirements of that event is. Discursive, I know, but it's stuff that people need to kind of really start to think about, I think.
Sure, yeah. I mean, from like what I can tell, it seems like people need to separate. Like you've outlined, like we need to separate. This is my goal to be a top athlete in whatever given sport. I also like training, but the end goal is to perform well.
Yes.
So people need to sort of accept that and just like imagine a guy. I know you've worked with different athletes, like perhaps like a rock climbing athlete that you've helped before.
Mm-hmm.
He's not been doing loads of rock climbing every single day to get to that point, doing loads of cardio, all this unnecessary stuff because he likes it. He just does the amount that he needs to do to improve his grip strength, his climbing ability, his strength endurance, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly that. As you train, so shall you perform. Long and slow, if that's how your training is, guess what? That's how it's going to be on the day. I am not a fan of volume, and I am definitely not an advocate that more volume is better than less volume, and that even more volume is still better. I think that the cumulative fatigue, without any real gain, actually, that is imposed on athletes by most of their trainers, in my opinion, is responsible for a lot of the injury that is occurring, because the cumulative fatigue leads to breakdown. It's a maladaptive process in a lot of these athletes. Yes.
Sure. Yeah. I'm always reminded of athletes like Arnold and the golden era bodybuilder in the day, and they'll be doing 6 sessions a week, 2-3 hours a day of training, pretty crap form, but they still seem to manage to build substantially impressive physiques. Now, if you were to go back in time and coach them, do you think your kind of how you implement your training and recovery kind of principles would make much difference towards their outcome as a bodybuilder on stage?
Always hard to project what could have been if, because it wasn't. I mean, the first part of what you said there was coaching guys like Arnold. Well, you couldn't have told him anything.
You couldn't have coached him anything.
No,
mate.
God, no. I mean, the ego on Arnold at that age. My word. But let's say you had some athletes that were prepared to listen, and let's say I'm going in there knowing what I know now, the knowledge that I have now, and the fact that I come from a completely different era. It's now 2023. Let's just ignore all of that and say I'm there in the 80s and I can say this. I'd have been laughed out of the place. In fact, often when I make videos about exercise physiology, decrying this idea that we should do all this volume and that zone 2 training is a great thing and all of that, when it's not, I always get people who for some reason think they know better than me because they've been involved in a sport for a while or whatever, telling me that I'm insane and, all of this and who am I anyway and all of that. So again, it's with this whole industry being real quick moving, What I can tell you from experience, having worked with a number of high-level athletes and military populations as well, the results that we get in those situations with those athletes / servicemen, whatever, based on the whole concept of minimum effective exposure being the exercise paradigm. Not how much can we get these soldiers to do without making them fall over. Not how many times a week can we train this football team, but how hard can we push them in terms of do 20 laps around the field sort of thing, whatever. But keeping what they do in their training very, very specific to their activity required. In other words, asking athletes to always output work at the competitive intensity. as if they're on and it's competition day to day. Every day that you train. Ergo, don't train as many days. Of course. It's a concept that just, for some reason, hasn't been seen fit to germinate in the minds of most people involved in sport, exercise physiology. It's just an accepted thing that this whole idea that volume is great and volume is the key and more volume is even better than that is so ingrained without it ever being underpinned by any actual science. But it's wrong. It's based on a fundamentally flawed overall working model of the energetics of exercise. Ergo, it will never work. That being said, there are so many different ways to skin a cat. And as it turns out, an athlete that trains at a certain level for a certain number of hours a week, their body will respond in such a way as to make that physiologically less disturbing. It's a response to the injury of asking their body to do that. And so it gets ready to do that. But that's not going to particularly assist at the high end. To train high end, to get to train high end stuff, you've got to train the high end. And somehow that's ignored as without getting into a full discourse on exercise physiology again today, that's basically where it sits.
Yeah. Perfectly well said. Appreciate that. Thanks for your response.
All right.